Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Recha Double honors to the elders and to the apostles of Great Millstone, and enough respected brothers that they're pushing and spreading the gospel of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai throughout the four corners of the world. Now, through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, I just want to do a quick lesson on this article, which is entitled Israel Savages EU over outrageous and indecent humanitarian rights review. And I'm just going to read through the article and, go through the spirit. Lord willing, this be edifying. It says relations between Brussels and Israel hit a new low as European ministers gathered to discuss whether to punish Israel over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And Brussels is Belgium. It says Benjamin Netanyahu's government issued a searing condemnation of the European Union after the bloc reviewed its economic ties with Israel in response to the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza. And this, at this point, has people think of it as old news in light of Israel attacking Iran and that conflict dying out. But, there's a lot of massacre going on over there in Gaza, by Amalek. This is a private submission to the EU from the Israeli government, seen by Politico, described Brussels' decision to re-examine its association agreement with Israel as outrageous and indecent. It accused EU officials of relying on biased evidence and failing to give Israel a fair chance to respond. And, Amalek being a crybaby, they just saying, people have not given them a fair chance to respond, which is completely bullshit, right? They've had forever to respond properly and to wage war in a manner that is in accordance with the Geneva Conventions, right? But they have not been doing it. They have allowed their soldiers, they even blessed their soldiers and encouraged them to be merciless and be, brutish, in just taking lives recklessly. It says the European Commission launched an investigation into whether Israel may have breached its humanitarian rights obligations under the association agreement after a majority of EU countries called for a review in light of humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. And this is why the scripture talks about, the beast shall hate the whore. Because, see, while we see the European nations and we see NATO and EU criticizing, Amalek, America is doing the exact opposite. It's emboldening Amalek, and it's giving them more weapons and more money to continue on in something that is against the wishes and the will of its other allies, the European Union. And so this is another example of divisions that will ultimately lead to the beast hating the whore and burning her flesh with fire. Let's get it right now. Revelations 17. All right, 15. Revelation 17, verse 3. And so he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. That woman is Babylon, sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And this represents America's allies, NATO and EU. And America is the one that sits right on top of this beast. They are the one that rule these beasts. They make decisions. They steer these nations they steer these nations to do things in the best interest of America first, and then to the other nations. That's why verse 4 says, and a woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abomination and abomination and filthiness of fornication. She was living good. She was flourishing in wickedness, right? And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abomination of the earth. Right? This may be a mystery, but it's to the world, but it's not a mystery to the men of the Lord, because we know Babylon is America. Babylon the Great is America, or the virgin daughter of Babylon is America. That's why it says, I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of martyrs of Yahushua Mashiach. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration, right? And so America is in the, what you call it, or this whore is doing things that the Roman Empire did previously. And America is the image of the Roman Empire. And the brothers have made videos of it over and over and over and over again. All you have to do is type in Google similarities between America and Rome, and in any sense it's more similar, or it's identical to Rome, more so than any other country in the world, right? Because they brought back the Roman way of ruling, the Roman way of doing things. You see Rome in America. As a matter of fact, the founding fathers explicitly stated that they wanted to set up America just like Rome, right? They wanted to make their money just like Rome had their money, and they act just like Rome does. That's why it says the blood drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahushua Mashiach. And this is twofold. It happened back then, but the same prophets, the scripture says that the spirit of the prophet is subject to the prophet. The prophets, when they are reincarnated again on the side, some of them will be martyrs of Yahushua Mashiach, but some of them will not taste death until they see Yahushua. It says, when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So John wondered, but it wasn't just any kind of wondering, but it was wondering in great admiration, right? So it's and this is something that a lot of people in this world they are guilty of, right? They allow themselves to, what do you call it? They because of the love they have for this place, right? They indulge themselves in the wickedness. They have alienated themselves from Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. They refuse to listen to the gospel. And so much so that when you tell them this world is going to be destroyed, or you show them evidence of things that will lead to the destruction of this place, they refuse to believe it. And as a matter of fact, they hate you for it, because they have they admire this whore, America, so much. So, again, it says, I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. All right. And so forward. It says the beast which thou saw. This goes into how it's twofold, right? The beast which thou saw was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition, and they that dwell upon the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundations of the world. So in John's time, like I said, this system, or this westernized world that we're living in, was existed during John's time as the Roman Empire, right? Beginning with the Roman Empire. So as the beast which thou saw was at its time, but it was not the empire that was supposed to go to perdition, right? It was not yet to be destroyed, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. The Roman Empire, although fell, again was resurrected in America, because and we know this because the scripture tells you that when the Roman Empire falls, then shall the kingdom of heaven be established. But the scripture even goes into details, primarily in the book of Isaiah, the 11th chapter. It tells you that when the kingdom of heaven is established, there's going to be peace, right? To the point where even animals, predators, are not even going to be killing other animals, and that you're going to have children playing with wild animals. We don't see that going on here. We don't see war season. We see war enduring forever. So we know that the beast has been reincarnated into America. Now jump down, right, and it breaks down all the heads, but let's go straight to the point. In Revelation 17 and 15, it says, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are people and multitude and nations and tongue. So America rules over the world right now. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. So the 10 horns are nations that are allied with America. But in time, they will hate the horde. That's why we say it's NATO and EU, because these are primarily the countries that are in league with America. They have formed a coalition with America, and America leads that coalition. This is what makes them fit in to be that beast. But in time, in the latter days, they will hate the whore and shall make her desolate and naked. How are they going to do that? How are they going to accomplish that? By way of the ICBMs. That's why it says, and they shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And so, with the terrorists, with the irrational support for the Israelis, the insults, with the Trump administration expressing that they really don't give a damn about the European Union. I mean, they really don't give a damn about NATO and EU because they are focusing on America. All these little things are going to add up, right? So, when you see news like this, it's important to have a spiritual eye. And you can only have a spiritual eye and understanding if you do what the scripture says a wise man will do. A wise man does what? See. Search Apocrypha. Nope. Let's do wise man. See, the next page. I don't know if I'm typing in right, but the scripture talks about Ecclesiastic is 39 and 1. So it says, but he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecies, right? So this gift of being diligent and always being spiritual comes when you are when you are well versed in the scriptures, right? When you know your breakdowns, every little details, anything that may that someone may struggle to make connection to in the scriptures will come easy for you, right? Because you are constantly occupied in the prophecy of the Lord, right? And giving the mind to the law of the Most High isn't literally talking about the first 5 books of Moses, right? Because even Yahushua quoted the book of Psalms and called it the law. The law is this entire scriptures. And once you read the scriptures, you meditate on it, right? You seek out wisdom of all the ancients. How do you do that? Through the scriptures, and be occupied in prophecies. He will keep the saying of renowned men, right? The men of the Lord, and where subtle parables are, he will be there also. He will seek out secrets of grave sentences and be conversant in dark parables, right? And these all, you can find all these things in the scriptures. If you seek to be in the company of wise men who speak parables, you may not literally have men doing this, right? Seeing as how you're in Babylon, but when you're not amongst the church, you can, in the spirit, do these things through the scriptures. Because when you read the scriptures and you read about the lives, or you read about what the Lord wants a man to do, and a man not to do, or you read the book of Psalms, or you read the book of Job, you read the book of Ecclesiastes, a book of Ecclesiastes, Wisdom of Solomon, it's almost as though you are a young man sitting in the midst of wise men, and they're throwing parables at you, and they're counseling you, right? So, things like this it's gonna cause a gulf, between NATO and EU and America, because of how they treat because America is Amalek's bitch. They do whatever Amalek wants, because the Amalekites, who are majority of the elite, are pulling the strings through Babylon, and which is gonna cause a division, and it's just gonna, and this is like the plan of the elite. They plan to, break down the world and establish their kingdom of heaven as part of their new world order. But the scripture says that when he's about to fill their bellies, right, then that's when the Lord is going to come in and interrupt him. And that the next day, bro, that moment when Yahushua comes in is the beginning of their captivity. They will go from living lavish lifestyles and never working straight into mines and mud and into slavery. It says the European Commission launched an investigation into whether Israel may have breached its humanitarian obligation under the association agreement after a majority of EU countries called for a review in light of the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. A draft of the findings seen by Politico on Friday suggested Israel's action in Gaza may have violated the terms of the agreement, a wide-ranging pact that covers economic cooperation in key industries, political dialogue, and trade. And these men have done a whole lot more, that requires, a greater response than simply reviewing, economic ties. These men are murderous, okay? They are, they were despicable in what they were doing over there. In its submission to the EU's diplomatic service, which conducted a review, and then they turned around and played a victim. The Israeli government set out the existential threat it faced from Iran and its proxies in Hamas, including a massacre of 1,200 people and mass hostage taking of October 7, 2023. In the midst of this grim reality, the European Union is considering a review of its relationship with Israel. This is not a policy adjustment. It is a moral distortion, Israel said in a document dated in June 18. Such an initiative is not only unjustified, it is outrageous and indecent. Israel said it reflects a blatant failure to distinguish between a democracy defending its citizens and genocidal countries and organizations that target Israeli civilians and use their own as human shields. it demonstrates blindness to the real threat to Israel, to regional stability, and ultimately to Europe itself. And like I said, they make themselves out to be the big victim. They make it seem like all this while they were good and they weren't messing with anyone, and all of a sudden these people snap, right? But it's not very difficult for you to find a documentary that shows you that while they have the power and over there, while America has given them weapons to be superpower over there in the Middle East, they oppress, the Palestinians, to where you have there's some roads you can't even walk on. You have these people just simply raiding neighborhoods and kicking people out and taking your home, sometimes even killing them. They find a well that the Palestinians use for sustenance, and they pour cement down it, to just mess with them. And when these people snap, they turn around and say, see, these people are unstable and they need to be killed. Well, so like, how does that make sense? That's why the scripture says, they speak wickedly concerning oppression. That's why in the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter, it talks about how, rejoice not, O Palestinian, for the rod of him that smote you is down. Because they are the ones that oppress in that region. But nevertheless, the Lord said even though the Lord is going to take down Esau, the rod of him that smote them, he's still going to have that place where he's still going to have them die in a nuclear missile. And then he's going to redo that land. But that's because even though we're seeing these men as victims, these Palestinians, the Lord has a case against them. Right? Let us not forget what they did. All these nations are guilty of something. At some point or another, they are guilty of spilling the blood of Jake, and every single one of them will pay for what they have done. All right. We only need to look forward to the coming of Yahushua, and then, all things will be set aright. So until that, I'm gonna end right there by giving all praise and glory unto Yahweh. Bahashem Yahushua, Bahashem Racha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.